All right, welcome back. I'm Bill Tucker, sitting in for the vacationing Steve Malzberg. Before we welcome in our second political panel of the day, I'm joined by my Newsmax TV colleague, Miranda Khan. She's got the latest on the Huma Abedin-Anthony Weiner split. Miranda?
Thanks, Bill. Hillary Clinton's longtime top aide, Huma Abedin, says today she's separating from her husband, former Congressman Anthony Weiner, after he got caught up in yet another sexting scandal. She released this statement today saying that she and her husband will still do what's best for their son. She also asked for privacy. Anthony Weiner apparently deleted his Twitter account after the New York Post reported that he had exchanged pictures and sexual messages with a woman starting in January of last year. One of the pictures posted shows Weiner in his underwear with his infant son lying on the bed next to him. The woman involved says Weiner repeatedly invited her to visit him in New York, but the two never met in person. Now, this isn't the first time Weiner has been involved in conflict. He was a former Democratic congressman who resigned back in 2011, you may recall, after he was busted sending photos and lewd messages to women online. Weiner, at the time, denied the whole affair.
It looked like a joke, looked like a bad joke about my name, but I did not send that photograph. We've hired a law firm that specializes in doing these for big companies, and they're going to bring an internet security operation in to try to take a look at it.
2 years later, Weiner decided to run for New York City mayor to rehabilitate his poor public image. But that idea went down the tubes after it was revealed Weiner was still sending lewd images and messages to women online, this time using the pseudonym name Carlos Danger.
I have said that other texts and photos were likely to come out, and today they have. As I've said in the past, these things that I did were wrong and hurtful to my wife and caused us to go through many challenges in our marriage.
Weiner claimed he went to therapy after that 2011 scandal. Donald Trump also weighed in today about this. He says Abedin is making a very wise decision. He also says he's worried that Hillary Clinton was careless in allowing Weiner to have proximity to highly classified information. Bill, back to you.
All right, thanks, Miranda. Yeah, I don't think we've got a reputation that can ever be resurrected here. Joining me to talk about this and some other stories of the day, Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right show at stacyontheright.com. And we're joined by Jane Velez-Mitchell, founder of JaneUnchained.com, New York Times bestselling author and author of Addict Nation, an Intervention for America. Jane, I think you got a client here. Somebody who needs some dramatic intervention. Look, the reactions are obvious, but I have to ask you anyway, your reaction to this in Huma's decision.
He's a very sick man. He is clearly an addict. I have the dubious honor of being an expert in addiction. I'm 21 years sober. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I wrote Addict Nation and another book on addiction. And there are people who just don't get it. And he may have stayed sober from his addiction for a short period of time, and he slipped. And Huma is a person who is essentially codependent on him, and now she's cut him loose, which is the smartest thing she can do. Listen, I think everybody watching at home knows somebody, sometimes in their own family, who has an addiction, either a substance addiction, drugs, alcohol, food, or a behavioral addiction, gambling, porn, hoarding, that they simply cannot control, or a relative or a friend who has this addiction. We know how intractable it is. I don't think this is cause for celebration by the enemies of Hillary Clinton. I just think it's a sad thing all around, and something that I think everybody can relate to. The man needs help.
No, I agree. And as a person who's known a number of people, very close friends who had addiction problems, yeah, it's not easy. And the worst thing about this is unless you recognize you have the problem, there isn't anything anybody else can do for you, period. Stacy, your thoughts?
I think it's about time. I wish that she'd taken this action before, when the previous allegations were brought out. I think maybe she didn't want to do that because they had a small child together, and now that he's 4 and he's actually featured in one of these horrible messages, it's such an unfortunate thing because it's just gone on too long, and now they have to find a way to parent this little boy together. I think it's going to be difficult for him because you can imagine that child services would possibly be interested in finding out what else he's done in the presence of his son, and it's just a horrible situation all around. I don't see any place to rejoice in it. I do see that there have been, again, questionable people permitted to be in close proximity to classified information, which calls into question the ability for Hillary Clinton to say that she makes good decisions about secure matters. This is a continual problem for her, and it's unfortunate that this again highlights that issue.
May I address that for a second?
You can.
Bill?
Go, Jane, do it.
Donald Trump's camp certainly has people who have scandals that have plagued them in his inner circle. I mean, the guy who just took over was once accused of domestic violence. The guy previous to that had $12.7 million in cash earmarked for him in secret accounts in a pro-Russian political party in the Ukraine. The guy before that was caught on camera manhandling a female reporter. I mean, we can throw stones all around. I think that there's a distinction that needs to be made between somebody who is married to somebody in the Clinton campaign and the people who are actually running Donald Trump's campaign.
Stacy, you're trying to get in there. Go.
Yes. So, I mean, if we're talking about proximity to the campaign, let's scrap that altogether and just talk about Hillary Clinton's actions altogether. Her classified email faux pas, the breaking of federal laws with her having people who aren't security clearanced review the emails, the wiping of servers, the destruction of federal property, which the emails are federal property.
Well,
I think she has enough in her past on her own.
Wait, Jane. Let Stacy finish, then we'll let you jump in here. Go ahead, Stacy. Finish up.
She's done enough on her own to bar her from ever gaining a security clearance. I know this because I had a security clearance on active duty in the Air Force, not nearly as high as the one that she'll be seeking out as President of the United States. She couldn't pass the regular secret security clearance vetting process. But since her last name's Clinton, we're just going to overlook all of that and focus on some guy who grabbed a reporter by the arm. Like, that's nearly as important as Hillary Clinton's own actions. The funneling of money through her foundation to Moria Education.
Okay, let's talk about
wait, Stacy, let Jane, before we get all jumbled up here, let Jane answer this.
Let's talk about Donald Trump's being co-opted by Russia and by Vladimir Putin, no less than the former
Hillary
head of the CIA. Well, now you had your turn. Let me say, the former head of the CIA said he has been in the trade. The phrase is recruited by Russia, recruited by Vladimir Putin, because he is so susceptible to flattery. Let's talk about the fact that he refuses to release his tax returns. Who knows what, if anything, he's given to charity and what money is going into his pocket. Let's talk about his many business bankruptcies and the many small business owners he left hanging when he walked away with bankruptcy protection and left them holding the bag. We've all seen the news reports. I mean, let's talk about a man who has polarized this country and increased racial division to a point we haven't seen since the early 60s. You want to talk about somebody who's a danger to the republic? The initials are DT.
Well, as much fun as this is, I want to talk about something else, maybe a little less controversial, having to do with Colin Kaepernick, the would-be quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Over the weekend, he just didn't stand for the national anthem. He says it's because blacks and minorities are suppressed in America. I want to start with you, Stacy. Do you agree with him, or do you agree with his actions, or what's your reaction to Colin Kaepernick's stance?
So Colin's pretty interesting because he is actually not like, he's biracial, or he's of mixed heritage. So he obviously identifies as a black person, but he was raised by an adoptive family that's all white. So in addition to the way that he feels blacks are oppressed, he comes from a background where he's been shown great kindness and love and affection from white people. He also receives the majority of his income from owners of the NFL, which happen to be a majority white. So there's an interesting dichotomy for him in the way that he says all blacks are oppressed. Blacks are oppressed in this country, when there isn't another country on the face of this planet where black people can live at the same standard of living or achieve the kinds of major successes in their lives, coming from nothing, rising up to become multi-millionaires or even billionaires. There's no other place on the planet I'd rather be a black woman. Please, Jane, hold on.
Let Stacy finish.
The issue that I have with what he said, and I went over this on a Facebook video that's on my Facebook page, Stacy on the Right Show, is that he's an entertainer. He's a football player. So he has to respect the 49ers, the team that he works for, and the image that they're projecting, which means it's time for him to make political
Stacy, I'm going to cut you off because we only have like a minute left. Because he's an entertainer doesn't mean he can't support, say, or do whatever he wants, no matter how much you or I might disagree with him. Jane, literally, I'm sorry, we got like 40 seconds left. Your
Okay,
thoughts?
I think it's interesting that Donald Trump supporters talk out of both sides of their mouth. You hear Donald Trump describe the African-American community. It's a blight of just a horror show, and what the hell do you have to lose? And now Stacy's talking about how we can be billionaires and people in the minority community can be billionaires. You know, I personally disagree with Cap's decision. I think he should have stood for the national anthem. I think he handed a gift to the alt-right who can then use it for their own political purposes, but it's a free country, as they say.
It is indeed. And with that, we're going to close it out. Jane, great to have you on. Thank you so much, Jane Velez-Mitchell, and Stacy on the right, host of the Stacy on the Right show. Stacy, thank you for being with us as well. Up next, more of the Steve Malzberg Show. Keep it right here.